The police burst into my home with urgent news. We've transported a child found in a car registered under your name. You're under arrest. Shocked by their sudden arrival, I struggled to comprehend. What? I don't have a child, I blurted out in confusion. The officer appeared equally bewildered, explaining they had identified the car's owner through the license plate. My name was on record. Could this be some terrible misunderstanding? Frantic with worry, I rushed to the hospital where the child had been taken. There, a 5-year-old boy lay on an emergency bed, his face flushed and marked with distress. Yet despite his condition, a surge of recognition and concern washed over me at the sight of his familiar features. From that moment, my life took an unexpected turn with this child at its heart. My name is Emily, aged 33, working from home. I met my husband Michael in college where we bonded over shared interests in a club, eventually marrying after graduation. Despite our decade-long marriage, we struggled with infertility. Despite treatments, my condition made conceiving difficult. Michael, always kind-hearted, reassured me. It's all right, let's focus on being happy together. My in-laws are wonderful people. They never pressured me about having children, especially since my brother-in-law already had a child of his own. However, I couldn't help but feel guilty for my own parents who eagerly awaited grandchildren. Thankfully, living close by, I made sure to visit them often. If only John had a child. I have a younger brother named John, 7 years my junior. Despite our parents treating us equally, John felt overshadowed by my achievements and intelligence. He drifted towards troublesome friends during middle school, rebelling against any comparison to his older sister. By the age of 20, he cut ties with our family, vanishing without a trace. Sometimes I leaf through old photo albums, reminiscing about John toddling after me as a toddler, calling me sis. One day, while working from home, my doorbell incessantly rang. Panicked, I checked the camera feed to see police officers at my doorstep. Abruptly, they announced, "We've brought a child found in a car. You're under arrest." Shocked and speechless, I stammered, "What? I don't have a child." The officer seemed as bewildered as I was. In that moment, my mind raced with unanswered questions. According to the police, a passerby noticed an abandoned car on the road with a child inside, reported it, and the child was rushed to the emergency room by ambulance. When I inquired about the car's location, I was stunned to learn it was parked in front of my parents' house, though they were currently away on a trip. The police traced the car's owner via its license plate, confirming it was registered under my name. However, the person using it was my younger brother, John. I used to lend my car to John, who had recently obtained his license, and he took it when he left home. Since then, the car had remained parked in front of my parents' house, brought out only for necessary inspections and maintenance. Despite my parents' scolding, they maintained the vehicle out of sympathy, believing John might still need it. But who was the child left alone in the car? Rushing to the hospital, I approached the emergency room bed where a small head peeked out from under a blanket, its curly, wavy hair strikingly familiar. My heart raced as memories of John's childhood flashed through my mind. Drawing closer, I saw the face of a boy around 4 or 5 years old, bearing a remarkable resemblance to John. Could it be this child? Before I could finish my thought, a panicked phone call from my mother, still away on her trip, interrupted my thoughts. John called me in a panic, asking me to look after his child. He explained he left the child in the car because we weren't home and it was scorching outside. What should we do? I reassured the distressed mother that the child had already been taken to the hospital and was expected to recover. Relieved, she promised to return soon. Understanding my mother's urgency to return, I pondered about this child who clearly belonged to my brother. Questions raced through my mind. When was he born, and who is his mother? I informed the police he's likely my brother's child, and committed to staying with him. Despite repeated attempts, I couldn't reach my brother on the phone. As I watched the child, his small body seemed to endure so much pain. A nurse approached and handed me his clothes, which were ragged and heavily soiled, with the name Tom on the tag. Seeing his extreme thinness and the condition of his clothes, it was evident Tom had endured a harsh upbringing in impoverished conditions. That evening, my mother returned from her trip and hurried to the hospital. "John," she whispered tearfully, embracing Tom, who bore a striking resemblance to my brother. By the following day, Tom's condition had improved, though he appeared visibly frightened. I gently reassured him, trying not to alarm him further. "How old are you, Tom?" I asked softly. 5 years old, he replied, holding up his hand and counting his fingers. "Wow, you speak so clearly. I remarked, impressed by his articulation. I praised Tom and gently stroked his head, finally coaxing the smile from his pale, thin face. Despite his frail appearance, he seemed to brighten up in response. The doctor informed us of bruises covering his body. I persuaded the police to let us care for Tom until we could reach John, skillfully avoiding an official report. 3 days later, Tom was discharged from the hospital. Unwilling to see him in his worn-out clothes, I bought him new ones which made him look even more charming and bright. As we prepared to leave the hospital, I managed to reach John on the phone amidst a chaotic background noise. How could you leave him in the car under the hot sun? He was taken to the hospital, but he survived, thankfully. I confronted him. He had bruises all over his body. Did you do this? Thomas is clumsy. I was just trying to discipline him, John retorted, his tone devoid of remorse, leaving me speechless. He's only 5 years old. He's slow, can't even remember his letters, no matter how many times I teach him. It's frustrating, so I left him at our parents' place. I was appalled by my brother's harsh treatment of his son. Concerned for Tom's well-being under such parenting, John callously added, I'm in the middle of a casino jackpot right now, before abruptly hanging up. Witnessing Tom's worried expression, tears welled up silently as I reassured him with a gentle stroke. Everything will be okay. He's just 5. It's natural for him to cry and seek comfort, yet he remains silent. His lack of calling out for his parents tugged at my heart, prompting painful thoughts. After discussing with Michael and our parents, we resolved to care for Tom in our home. Back at home, I prepared a children's lunch of hamburgers and fries adorned with colorful character flags. When I set it in front of Tom, his eyes lit up in wonder. I've never had anything like this before. Can I really eat it? Of course, Tom, it's all for you, I assured him, delighted by his messy enjoyment, ketchup smudged on his cheeks, and a joyful grin on his face. In the evening, Tom giggled and splashed around in the bath with Michael, thoroughly enjoying himself. At bedtime, I nestled beside him, reading picture books. He listened attentively with bright eyes, yet occasionally a hint of worry clouded his expression. Can I stay here forever? I don't want to go back home, he asked me suddenly, his voice tinged with uncertainty. I understand. You want to stay here, don't you? I asked gently. Tom nodded with visible relief, and my heart ached to see him in such a vulnerable state. In the days that followed, he grew increasingly attached to Michael and me. He eagerly offered to help fold laundry or carry bags when we went shopping, his small frame determined and eager to contribute. Living together, I discovered what a kind and wonderful child Tom was. Both Michael and I grew deeply fond of him, leading us to discuss the possibility of adopting him, especially if John and his partner had no plans to raise him. Upon checking with the city office, I learned that Tom's birth had been registered by my brother and his wife, and they were listed on the residence certificate as living with Tom at our parents' house. We began consulting with family court about the next steps. About a month after Tom came to live with us, John and a young woman arrived for a visit. Thanks for taking care of Tom, she greeted us warmly. As soon as Tom saw them, he instinctively sought refuge behind me, clearly uneasy. It was evident he had endured unsettling experiences. My brother, whom I hadn't seen in years, appeared more assertive than before, dressed unkemptly, signaling troubled times. The young woman with him introduced herself as Risa, adorned with multiple ear and nose piercings, exuding a flashy, carefree aura. How did you find out where I live? I questioned, feeling uneasy. Hey sis, Mom, looks like you're living the good life in this nice house, huh? John remarked casually. I need to talk about Tom. Let us in. Reluctantly, I agreed, unable to refuse when Tom's well-being was at stake. According to my brother, he had married Risa shortly after leaving home. They had lived a transit lifestyle, often staying in their car due to lack of stable accommodation. As John looked around our home, he finally came to the point. I heard from Mom that you don't have children, right? After 10 years of marriage with no kids, it must be tough, John remarked casually. What are you suggesting? I asked, sensing an underlying motive. We have a proposal. How about taking Tom off our hands? Of course, it won't come cheap, John replied nonchalantly. I was taken aback by his audacity, trying to sell his own son after earlier abandoning him at our parents because of inconvenience. Anger surged within me. John, do you even see your child as a human being? He's not something you can just sell. What? Acting all self-righteous now. I rebelled because of your strictness. Our parents always favored you. It's ridiculous how you blame us for your failures, John retorted defiantly. Shut up. Just give me the money, I snapped back, infuriated. John raised his hand threateningly, poised to strike me. Suddenly, Tom, who had been hiding behind me, stepped forward. He stretched out his arms, trying to shield me from John's aggression. Witnessing Tom's brave gesture only strengthened my resolve to protect him. Selling a child for money was inconceivable. Despite my anger, I decided to offer them the $13,400 I had saved as a settlement. I made them sign an agreement stating they would never interfere with Tom again and obtained their consent for his adoption. John's wife callously remarked, "It's a relief not to have to deal with such a troublesome child," shocking me with her indifference. After the formalities were settled, they greedily took the money, sneered, and vanished. From that moment, Tom truly became our son, and we finalized all the necessary legal procedures. The ensuing days overflowed with joy. Tom thrived in health, and our lives as a couple were brimming with smiles and happiness because of him. During this time, we discovered Tom's talents and were eager to nurture them. Yet 15 years later, another unexpected encounter unfolded. Once more, my younger brother and his wife paid us a visit. John sported a scruffy beard, unkempt hair, and appeared much older than his 41 years. His wife, without makeup, wore worn-out clothes and torn plastic sandals. It was evident they had fallen on hard times, living a rough existence. An uneasy feeling settled over me as they appeared unexpectedly, knowing their visit couldn't bode well, especially with my dependable husband Michael away at work that day. "What do you want?" I asked cautiously. "I need some money," John replied bluntly. "Why should I give you money?" I countered, wary of his intentions. "I heard Tom, that idiot, managed to get into a prestigious medical school," John remarked, his disdain evident. It seemed he had learned about Tom's achievements from someone in our neighborhood at a local tavern. In reality, Tom is incredibly bright. He's been at the top of his class since elementary school and recently secured a spot at a prestigious medical school straight out of high school. "Why is that any concern of yours now?" I asked sharply. "It's a big deal. He's my son, and since he's turned out so well, I think I'll take him back," John declared with a smirk. "What?" I exclaimed, stunned by his audacity. "If you think I'll agree to that, how about you demand $33,500? Sister, didn't I already receive $13,400 from you 15 years ago? John retorted. "That's a different situation. I can't give you that kind of money," I replied firmly. When I firmly declined, John seized my collar and threatened me, his grip tight and menacing. The pain I felt was more emotional than physical as I looked at my estranged brother in dismay. Just as tension escalated, a voice interrupted with a shout, "Stop," and forcefully grabbed John's arm. It was Tom, now a sturdy 20-year-old, who easily subdued John, pinning him to the floor. Seeing Tom grown up, John's wife spoke in a saccharine tone. "You've grown so much. I'm your mother. I've missed you." But Tom responded firmly, "My only parents are the ones in this house. I remember what you did to me when I was 5. I felt love for the first time here. You are not my parents." Even after Tom's declaration, they persisted. I then produced the agreement we made 15 years ago. It explicitly stated, "We will have no further involvement with the child. Failure to comply will result in legal action." "You've broken your promise. I'm calling the police," I declared firmly. They looked visibly shaken, scrambling to make excuses, claiming they had completely forgotten about the agreement. In truth, we're being hounded by debt collectors. Without $33,500, we're in serious trouble, John pleaded, his tone now desperate after earlier threats. "Don't expect sympathy from me. I can't help you," I responded coldly. "The day you abandoned Tom, you lost any claim to my support. I don't have a brother anymore." "I'm sorry, but no," I replied coldly, refusing to enable his actions any further. As their persistence pushed me to consider involving the police, they reluctantly departed. Later, I learned that the couple had been apprehended for shoplifting and were serving time in jail, their lives evidently in turmoil. Meanwhile, Michael, Tom, and I enjoyed a peaceful and joyful existence together. Tom's aspiration to become a doctor, driven by a desire to alleviate suffering, filled me with immense pride and happiness. Reflecting on our life, Tom's presence had brought laughter and contentment into our days. We looked forward to continuing